And as you would have heard, I did practice in the Supreme Court of India. So I started out as a litigation lawyer. I come from a family of lawyers and judges, so I guess it seemed like a natural path. Although when I was deciding what to study, I went for a commerce degree first because I thought I'm going to, be the rebel and go into the corporate world. But eventually, I think those dinner table conversations got to me, and I decided to become a lawyer. So I did, as I said, I did litigation, and I did it at the highest court in India, which is the Supreme Court of India. And then I moved to a couple of top tier firms there in the corporate area, and then in-house for a big firm which had a number of businesses. And after that, I moved to Australia. I got married to someone from here. I moved to Australia. First thing I did was to do a master's of law because I thought it'll be good to have a local degree, and I had always wanted to do a master's. So I did that at Melbourne University. Then I started looking for jobs here around the same time, and I was told that my degree and my qualifications and background weren't good enough or were not worth anything, which was very disappointing. So, but I kept trying, and when I finished, I had to get accredited to practice, so I applied to do that, and I was asked to do 4 subjects and 6 months of training. And by that time, I started talking, and the recruiters weren't putting my name forward, so I started meeting partners of law. I approached partners of law firms directly, and when I met them, I told them the value set that I will bring to the firm, the additional experience that I had, and how that would benefit the firm. And luckily for me, my first job was at a top tier, Clayton Youth. So I used that as my training, and also I did my subjects while I was there. After that, I moved to Minter Ellison because I wanted, and that was in the banking and finance area. I moved to mergers and acquisition in Minter Ellison. When I was working there was a recruiter who called me and said, I've got an opening for you at a small boutique firm. And I said, I'm already working at Minters, and he got the shock of his life because he told me that I won't ever get a job at a big firm. And he said, how did you get that? That was his first question. And I said, well, I did. I persevered, and I believed in myself, which I think a lesson for everyone. You've got to believe in yourself. So I worked there, but the big firm culture is not very inclusive usually. And I did face a bit of discrimination, or I felt left out because I was constantly part of conversations which I didn't know much about, like the private schools people went to, or the TV shows they grew up with, or the footy teams. Now I sit on an AFL board, but at that time I wasn't very familiar with the AFL either. And so and people came to speak to you when you only had work. So I decided because I didn't feel very included, I thought I'm going to move somewhere where there is a bit more diversity. So I moved to the government. I worked at the Victorian Government Solicitor's Office for nearly 11 years, which was a great experience. Again, I was doing commercial work, major projects for the state of Victoria, procurement, tendering, and general commercial. And it was really interesting work. Mostly on the other side were the big firms. So I was still doing really good quality work, but I had a bit of a work-life balance, and it was more inclusive. And then I started my own practice 3 years ago because I was starting to get very enrolled in all the advocacy work that I was doing. So I sit on a number of boards, which were mentioned before. I sit on 3 sports boards. I started my own not-for-profit in sport. I also sit on some other big not-for-profits like Good Shepherd Australia, New Zealand, Graduate House of the University of Melbourne, and one more. So I was sort of getting very involved with that, and I decided that I'll divide my time between my practice and the community work that I do, because I love that. So I started, so that's where I've sort of landed, and I have a lot of flexibility with what I do, so I can spend my time in, and because of the experience that I've got over so many years, I'm able to, so I do commercial, mainly transactional commercial. I can turn over the work pretty quickly, and then I use the rest of the time to sort of do my, the other work that I do in the community. So that's sort of where I am. A lot of my work is diversity, inclusion, bit of racism as well. And I speak regularly on those issues as well. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Melina. That's very impressive. And I have to ask, what football team do you support?
I go for the Tigers.
We won't hold that against you. Okay, thank you so much. Moving on, our next panelist is Melissa Lyon. Melissa is an innovation specialist committed to assisting the legal industry to develop human-centered design skills. She draws on many years of experience in legal practice as a commercial litigator and as a partner of a law firm. She has also held senior business development roles, including managing BDM teams and leading numerous projects and programs at top-tier Australian legal firms. Melissa is now the Executive Director and Experienced Designer of Hive Legal, an innovative law firm which has changed the legal profession by introducing legal design thinking, technology-based solutions for its clients, and a truly flexible work practice. She is a member of the Centre for Legal Innovations Advisory Board and Geeky Guru. She is a certified legal chatbot builder and was recognised as the Australian Law Awards as Business Development Professional of the Year in 2017 and Innovator of the Year 2020. Welcome, Melissa. Thank you so much for being part of this panel tonight. And I'll ask you just the same question I asked Melina. Just tell me a little bit about yourself and where you come from and how you got there.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me here too. Okay, so what I do now is something that I would never have ever imagined that I could do when I started out my career in the law. So I made up my own title, really. I'm an experienced designer, which means that I use design thinking and the mindsets that come and the processes that come with that to help our clients identify innovative ideas, to develop them and implement them. And so it's a very different way of thinking than we have traditionally all been trained. Those of us who are legally trained, it's a different way of looking at things. But also at the moment, I am an executive director of Hive Legal too, which is basically a non-practicing principal. What I'm really happy to see in terms of this panel today, or this session today, is that what we're talking about is alternate careers rather than non-lawyer careers, which is really nice to see. I love that idea of alternative careers. So where I came from was really from a very traditional legal career to start off with. So Bachelor of Arts Law from the University of Tasmania, practiced in a firm in Tasmania for a number of years, worked my way up from what was then apprentice at law to partner of that firm. Was very lucky, and this was many years ago, to have the benefit of a very flexible and progressive managing partner at that stage, and I was able to be a part-time partner when I first became a partner in that law firm. And I think that having that background and support has probably, it has actually given me the confidence to look to see how things can be done differently and to really agitate for that type of thing right throughout my career. So after being in that law firm, as I said, as a commercial litigator, I moved to a top tier firm in Melbourne, and that was Minter Ellison as well, Melina. We might have crossed paths at some stage, and practiced as a senior associate there, once again in a job share arrangement, which was quite different then as well. But I had always had a real interest in administrative design, organisational design, management. And whilst I didn't mind the practice of law, I really enjoyed the idea of the management side of it. And I also really enjoyed the client relationship and business development part of the work that I did. So that gave me the opportunity. I was given the opportunity at Minter Ellison to move into business development. So I gave up my practicing certificate, which at the time was a bit difficult when I think about it. I held on to it for a while, but then really felt like I could really carve a career in doing things differently. And I was able to, I suppose, bring a number of years of practice to that different side of things, doing business development. That was great because, you know, really could work throughout the firm, work with many different, not just lawyers, but also many different people within the firm who had different skill sets, and I would say crucial skill sets to us being able to deliver the services that we could. So, you know, working with people in HR, in the technology areas, know-how, and so really seeing the benefits that those skills bring to the client experience. I think one of the things that I found a little bit frustrating about a bigger law firm was that there wasn't necessarily that collaboration that you can get across the board. So when I had the chance to join Hive Legal, which is a much smaller but much more progressive firm, in 2014, I joined that firm, really looking at, once again, concentrating once again on the human-centered side of things, looking to improve the experience not just for our clients but also for the people who work in the firm. So very flexible work practices, different pricing systems, all of that type of thing. So from there, I've really built up a career in design thinking and consulting. So my role now at the firm is, as well as being a non-practicing principal and in being involved in the management of the firm, obviously, is also to head up our business and innovation consulting practice, where we work with clients to bring those innovative mindsets and design thinking solutions to help them. So, as I said, would never have expected that I would just be describing myself as an experienced designer when I first started my legal career many years ago. Thanks, Matt.
That's great. Thanks so much, Melissa. It's a fascinating journey. Next up on our panel, we have Zoe Chan. Zoe Chan is the principal lawyer at Annika Legal, which is a community legal service provider that helps vulnerable Victorian renters. In this role, she's responsible for managing the service delivery of Annika Legal, designing service improvements, mentoring student interns, and contributing to the organisation's strategic direction. Zoe was previously a lawyer at Justice Connect, where she gained experience in empowering self-represented litigants to navigate civil litigation, exploring innovative use of tech to deliver legal assistance and facilitating pro bono projects. Zoe was also a fellow at PLT Net, a global NGO that builds pro bono networks worldwide to help civil society organisations build capacity and advocate for social change. Zoe has also volunteered at community legal centres across Brisbane and Melbourne, including Rails, Law Right, the UQ Pro Bono Centre, ASRC, which is the Asylum Seeker Resource Centre, and Moonee Valley Legal Service. Welcome, Zoe. And Zoe, I'll also ask you if you could just tell the participants here tonight a little bit about yourself and what you are currently doing and how you managed to end up here. Thanks.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Matt, and thanks for inviting me to the panel. And also, I'm just like honestly a little bit terrified because I'm amongst some very distinguished and experienced panelists. So really honored to be here. So yeah, in terms of what I currently do, I'm at Annika Legal. It's a pretty new organization. We're only about 3 or 4 years old. But we're very ambitious in terms of what we think we can achieve using our kind of service model. So what I currently do, I am the principal lawyer of Annika Legal, or the legal advice comes through me, but kind of other parts of my job at the moment include kind of understanding in a very under-resourced environment what we could do to make the experience for students the best it could be in their internship, to empower the students to know that they can deliver so much social change and good in their roles as lawyers in the future, and also right now as one of our interns or volunteers. But also in addition to that, really looking into, like, with the resources that we have, what can we do to make Annika Legal the perfect complement to all the amazing services that are already out there for tenancy in the tenancy sector in Victoria. So yeah, that's what I currently do. I'm actually not that much out of law school. I've only been practicing for about 5 or 6 years. And in terms of how I got to where I am today, I think in terms of how my career trajectory is alternate to others, is that from a very kind of early part of my degree, I knew that I never wanted to touch commercial. I don't even want to think about it. As I was going through law school and everyone's talking about clerkships and, you know, how do you get into the best firms and how do you get those like business skills? I was like, no, I'm going to go into the CLC space or something similar, pro bono. The problem with that is there is not as much of a set pathway to do that. So, you know, when you kind of set your mind on that, you kind of have to find your own path through that. And that's been a really difficult thing. And a lot of times you just kind of have to back yourself with a career path where there are no guides. There's nothing to guide you. And perhaps I can give you a bit more advice about this in the future if this is kind of the career path you want to get to. But I was really lucky through volunteering so much and putting myself out there to be able to put myself forward as a good candidate to get started as a graduate lawyer at Justice Connect. That was a wonderful experience. I was able to learn in still an under-resourced environment, but comparatively very well-resourced compared to a lot of CLCs, what creating social change and empowering people looks like through tech, through innovation, through turning all the triggers out there of all the lawyers who really want to use pro bono to contribute to systemic change. So I was really lucky to be able to get that experience. And then I was also very lucky and honestly a little bit terrifying again, but I put myself out there to be able to go overseas with PillNet for 6 months immediately prior to the pandemic, which was very well timed on my part. And I was able to see what the pro bono and social change space looks like in New York, in Hong Kong, in Myanmar, and etc. So that was a really wonderful experience. And all of those experiences accumulated to enable me to be in a position now to move over to Annika and to kind of undertake this challenge of how can we best use Annika to solve the problems that we see in a society around us. And yeah, that's how I got to where I am.
Thanks so much, Zoe. That's fantastic. Our next panelist will need no introduction to many students here at VU. Dr. Bill Swanee is a senior lecturer in the College of Law and Justice at Victoria University in Melbourne. Bill is an established researcher and author, particularly in the areas of free speech, human rights law, equal opportunity law, and media law. He recently completed a PhD examining Australia's racial vilification laws. Bill is admitted as an Australian lawyer in the Supreme Court of Victoria. Prior to commencing teaching in 2013, he was a principal lawyer at a busy community legal centre. So welcome, Bill. I appreciate you being here today. And again, I'll ask you if you could just introduce yourself, tell us what you're doing now and how you got there. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Matthew. Thanks for the really warm welcome. And I'd also like to acknowledge the Boon Wurrung and Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nations, who are the traditional custodians of the land that I'm on this evening. Their sovereignty was never ceded. And to be honest, I ended up studying law a bit by accident. And speaking with students, it's not an uncommon story. Yeah, I'm the first in my family to go to university. I have no connections in the legal. My family has no connections in the legal profession, and I surprised myself, I think, by in year 12 getting quite good results, and that's perhaps one of the reasons that led me into studying law. And I was also, to be honest, influenced by some films, including A Few Good Men and films like The Firm. And it was really only after I'd finished my degree, when I started volunteering at Fitzroy Legal Service, that I really came to appreciate the impact which the law can have on people and the huge impact which it can have on their life. And particularly like volunteering at Fitzroy Legal Service, you see things like clients who are literally drowning in fines, traffic fines, traffic infringements, driving unregistered vehicles, and people who are really caught in a trap, in terms of their legal situation, and it's spiraling out of control. And because they don't know much about how the law works, it's really easy for that process to spiral downward and become much worse. But I also met some incredible lawyers at Fitzroy and other places who are doing incredible work in terms of changing people's life for the better and providing legal support and legal services which were able to make a huge impact on people's life. And it really introduced me to this idea of legal practice as service. So not just a career, but actually legal practice as service, as a service to the community. I ended up working at the Tenants Union, and I really enjoyed legal practice. Like I enjoyed the cut and thrust of it. I often would represent clients at tribunal hearings, and I had some pretty satisfying wins, particularly with tenants living in public housing, and when we're able to prevent them from being evicted from their home. And those were often very hard fought battles where you'd have the resources, the full resources of the government on the side of the landlord, and you'd have literally me or some other representative on the side of the tenant. And so some of those victories were really satisfying. I really enjoyed legal practice. And at the Tenants Union, I really enjoyed training new staff. That was one part of it that I really enjoyed, and also the law reform part of it, being involved in trying to improve tenancy laws and make them work better, particularly for tenants. But I realised after practicing there for about 3 or 4 years that an academic career had much better opportunities in terms of the things that I was really interested in. A legal academic career has great opportunities in terms of being able to work on law reform projects and being able to change and improve the law. And I can talk about that a bit more in a moment. But I also really enjoyed the teaching part. And I realised that compared to legal practice, working in the legal academy, you have much more opportunity to educate people and to hopefully inspire students to work in human rights law. And even if they're not working specifically in human rights law, to incorporate some social justice aspect in whatever type of work which they do.
That's great. Thanks so much, Bill. And also, I'm a big fan of A Few Good Men as well, one of the greatest courtroom scenes in movie history, I believe. So our last panelist tonight is Ryan Liscastro. Ryan graduated from VU with honours in 2009 and obtained his graduate diploma of legal practice in 2010. He was admitted in that year and has practiced at various personal injury firms until 2018. He joined the College of Law in 2018 as a lecturer and is currently their assistant director. Welcome, Ryan. I appreciate you being on the panel tonight. And just like the other 4 panelists, if you could just give a little bit of a background to who you are, what you're currently doing, and how you managed to get there. Thanks.
Well, thank you for that introduction, Matt. And I feel a bit nostalgic tonight. Back to where it all began at VU, which gave me an opportunity to practice law in their relatively new course back in 2006 when I started at VU. And over the subsequent 3 or 4 years, I learned a lot at VU, and their law course was fantastic. I guess I followed the pretty standard path of doing your law degree, then doing practical legal training, and then just entering into the law, where I worked at various personal injury law firms. Ryan Carlisle Thomas Lawyers gave me a start, and I practiced in personal injury litigation, did a little bit of wills, also did some institutional abuse matters as well, which was pretty heavy, as you'd imagine, and practiced in litigation for around 7-8 years. And as Bill said before, I enjoyed it. It was pretty fast paced. It was dynamic, but there was just, I guess, something missing. There was some job satisfaction, and I always had an interest in teaching and giving back and mentoring. And a job opportunity at the College of Law. They were looking for a lecturer, and I thought, well, why not give this a shot? They were looking for 5 years post-qualification experience, and never in my wildest dreams thought that I'd even get a call back. However, they called me back, and I got the job, and I've been at the College of Law for 4.5 years now. I've been an assistant director there for just over a year, And my role at the College of Law is looking after a group of committed, dedicated lecturers who mentor law grads after they've completed their law degree. My specific role is looking after the curriculum and content that we deliver to law grads in preparation for their admission to the Supreme Court of Victoria or wherever else they're going to get admitted. And it's extremely rewarding. And it's funny, when I left high school, a little bit like Bill, I sort of fell into it because I was more interested in following my older brother, who was a physiotherapist, and I didn't get high enough to get a law placement in the university. So I studied around for a couple of years at RMIT doing various bits and pieces, and VU gave me a chance, as they do to everyone, because I'm from the western suburbs, and it was just a fantastic opportunity. And if you had said to me back in 2009 when I finished at Victoria University that I'd be an assistant director in Victoria, Australia's largest PLT provider, I would have said you're dreaming, much like Dale Kerrigan did on The Castle, another one of my favourite law movies. So I'm just so happy to be on this panel, and it's been a long journey, but a lot of hard work and diligence, and here I am today. You're on mute, I think, Matt.
Apologies. Thank you so much, Ryan. I really appreciate that. And I tend to agree that The Castle is an absolutely fantastic film, one which actually made it into my constitutional law exam. One of the questions was, is it the vibe? And the answer, that was not the answer. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, we've got two halves of this session. So I'm going to be just asking a couple of questions to our panelists now, just to get a bit of discussion going. However, feel free to pop a question into the chat if you would like me to ask a question at the end of this session at around about 7 o'clock. I'll start taking some questions from the audience, or just hang on to your question. And feel free to just put your hand up or just unmute yourself and ask the question when the time comes. So first, we've learned a little bit about our panelists and where they came from and what sort of area they're in at the moment. One thing I've noticed about VU students is that we tend to be particularly practical. So I would like to ask all of our panelists, what does a typical day look like in your particular space? And again, I think we'll just do it in the same order as before. So Melina, I might call on you first. And if you could just tell me, how do your days actually practically play out?
So thank you so much. I mentioned before that my, I guess, because this is an alternative careers panel as well, half my time is spent in practicing law, and half of it is mainly in community work or sitting on boards, the governance side, part of which is sports boards as well. So it's quite a diverse kind of I have days where I have completely different things from one spectrum to the other. And so, for example, I mean, just in terms of the work that I do, will be client meetings, it'll be phone calls with clients. A lot of them don't want to see you anymore. It's just all on phone or Zoom. So you manage to do that. I am a transactional lawyer, so I can draft something, send them, they come back and I finalize. So that kind of simple stuff. But also there's a lot of networking that I do, networking events that I go to, speaking engagements like this one, but I speak at a lot of in-person and other events as well, but at very, very diverse kind of organizations, whether they're not-for-profits or whether they're like in the public sector or sports related, you know, an event. So I do that. And have board meetings. So board meetings take up a lot of my time, a lot of evenings, sometimes mornings as well. But usually after work, it is 2-3 hours of a board meeting in a week. Sometimes I could have 2, but also when you're sitting on boards, you have to sit on subcommittees as well. So I chair some of them, and so I have to attend those in the or chair them in the afternoon and even sometimes in the evening. It's pretty kind of diverse. I thought I'd mention a few things like my next week's calendar. From my next week's calendar, so it'll give a bit of an idea of what I do. So next Monday I've got usual client work, but then I've got a board meeting in the afternoon, which has got a subcommittee meeting first, and then it's got another longer meeting, and that's a government board. So we get paid on government boards, which is great. Some other boards don't pay, so that's a good one. But the board meeting usually lasts 3-4 hours, and it's kind of out of work timings. And then I have to sort of still continue doing some of my other work for the client. Sometimes it's a very bad habit, and I'm not asking anyone to do it. I sometimes work very late at night as well. So I take a break. I've got a daughter as well, and spend time with family, and then I go back to work, and I do that if I have to finish some of the work. Tuesday, I've got an appointment with, I'm chairing the sexual harassment task force, which I do at the Law Institute. So I've got a meeting for that. And we'll be discussing some of the sexual harassment stuff that we're doing at the Law Institute and outside in the wider legal profession. Then after that, I've got a meeting with Justice Maxwell, who's the president of the Court of Appeal. He's retiring very soon, not next week, the week after, and Justice Irving, Associate Justice Irving, and the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. So I'm meeting with them to discuss diversity in the legal profession. That's wearing my Asian Australian Lawyers Association hat. And then I've got to come back and do some more work. And in between, there'll be client meetings. Last one, another day, I've got to attend a seminar in the morning, which is on Australia-India business relationship. So there's a seminar being run by Austrade, so I'll be attending that for breakfast. Then I have work during the day, and then we're launching the William Arquette. We've got a scholarship launch for my Asian Australian Lawyers Association at the Owen Dixon Chambers, which is a collaboration between the Asian Australian Lawyers Association, the bar, because it is our event, but the bar is this time sponsoring it, and so is Melbourne University, and I'll be speaking there, and we'll be launching that the scholarship. This is kind of like very diverse kind of events. Sort of, my day looks pretty diverse, whether it's events or work or whatever I may be doing.
Yeah, that does sound particularly diverse, Melina. Sounds very interesting as well, and you seem to fit in a lot in a day.
Sometimes, yes.
So thank you so much. I'll now ask the same question to Melissa. So what does your typical day look like?
Yeah, typical's hard because they're all, I think a bit like Melina, they're always different, but I took a similar approach and thought, what does my day look like today and what's going to look like tomorrow? So today, there were a lot of management type of things that we did around the firm. We were looking at our budget, so working that out. Also looking at responses to tenders that we're doing to get more client work, talking to clients around satisfaction and the experience that they're having with us. I also do coaching, so I'll BD coaching, so that will take up some time as well in terms of the day. And tomorrow my day is spending the whole day facilitating a design thinking workshop with a client who is looking at designing the future strategies for their organisation. So once again, using that design thinking side of things. So my days are very different. It's a mix between the management side of it, the consulting side of it, and it just changes from day to day, which is something that I love as well.
Yeah, I think having a good diversity of tasks really helps you keep motivated. Thank you so much for that, Melissa. It's really fascinating. Zoe, I might call on you now. In a community legal centre, can you just tell me what does a typical day look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in a community legal centre, and especially the ones that I have been a part of, they're very characterised by a high volume of clients with very little resources, but so hence forcing us essentially to use innovation to get across it all. And I think that characterizes what my day-to-day looks like. Similar to my fellow panelists, I wear a lot of different hats, but all of those hats are the hats that you would expect to find in a legal service. So from day to day, I wear the hat of a paralegal, an intake person, a lawyer, a principal lawyer, sometimes also a user researcher, in addition to, like, I wouldn't say I'm a developer because we have a developer, but I do have to work with my developer closely to build kind of technical solutions, like technological solutions to the problems we're facing from a legal process point of view, as well as like legal ops person, like streamlining legal ops. And in addition to that, putting on these hats, which I take really seriously, being a mentor to all the many students that are working with us, not only providing them with like the legal supervision, but also like I wish to be a mentor to each and every single one of them that comes into contact with Annika. So these are just some of the many hats that I put on within legal service delivery, and then also within my role as being one of the few employees of Annika Legal, stakeholder engagement, getting out there, networking, understanding what resources that are out there that could support us, that we could partner with, and contributing to kind of like my CEO and our head of partnerships kind of work in that regard. So for sure, my day-to-day looks very different every single day. And the only way I can kind of get across it is being very intentional about what hats I have on at any time, so that I can be very intentional about when I'm in the weeds of client service delivery versus when I need to take a step back and understand what is the big picture and where do I fit in a big picture, not just in this week, but 6 months from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, etc.
That's great, Zoe. That sounds really interesting. Can you tell me a little bit more about the innovation that you mentioned? You've mentioned innovation a couple of times, and then bringing up your developer, which I'm assuming you're talking about a web developer or some sort of technical developer, or?
At this point, I just call him my magician, because he develops our website, which is very important, not only for our branding, but also as we kind of design what the dissemination of legal information to the general public looks like. But he's also, what we're working really hard on at the moment is actually developing our own internal case management system, which sounds boring maybe when I say it like that. It's actually extremely interesting, because if you want to build a system that works well, you really need to understand the perspective of every single user that is interacting with it. So that's the clients, the interns, the lawyer, the paralegal leads, etc. And designing in a way that isn't just like, hey, here's a system, here's the processes, follow it. But you want to design it in a way that adheres to their natural user behavior, so that as you're running through a matter in the quickest way and nicest way possible for all users, you're also getting all the data that you need, that you can come back to look at, to be like, what are we doing well? What aren't we doing well? Where are the pain points? So that enables my job as a principal to be easier, but also to be more effective for the general community overall.
Yeah, very interesting, and something that I'm particularly interested in as well. So it's not boring to me. It's a very important part, and I'm sure that Melissa would agree that it's not boring as well.
Can I say, Matt? No, absolutely not boring. And it's great that idea too of, as Zoe said, looking at those pain points, but links back to what we were talking about before, that human-centered way of looking at things, that you're actually looking at the human experience of doing this, which sometimes the law tends not to necessarily look at, especially from a business perspective. So to be able to do that is great. So like Zoe today, for example, we were looking at working with a legal tech vendor in terms of how we automate our documents. And it was really good to see, because here's the product, but then you actually working through it to work out how it was going to work for us specifically was a really interesting time that I spent today as well.
Great. Okay, I'll now move on to Bill. So Bill, in your position as a law lecturer and academic, what does your regular day look like?
Yeah, like the previous speakers, my day-to-day work varies a lot, but there are three basic things that lecturers or academics do. The first part is teaching and designing units, and also everything that's included in that, so assessing students' work. And I'm very fortunate that I teach in the area of human rights law which aligns with my practice history and also with the areas that I'm interested in researching in. It's great to see some of my current and recent students in the audience tonight. The second part of what I do as an academic is I do research and write journal articles. And sometimes, journal articles will take 12 months, sometimes 18 months from beginning to end. I also finished my PhD last year, which is in the area of hate speech or anti-vilification laws. And I've published in this area. And recently this year, one of my journal articles was actually cited by a tribunal member in a I think it was in the ACT. And for an academic, I think there's no sort of higher accolade than when your work is actually cited in a judicial opinion. So that was quite an accomplishment. The third thing that I do is community engagement. So I'm a member of the Human Rights Committee at the Law Institute, and I've been a member of that committee for long time, 11 years or so. And as part of that role, I've contributed to submissions which that committee has written to government inquiries and parliamentary inquiries. And fortunately, the area of anti-vilification laws that I research in is quite a topical area at the moment. And there's been quite a few parliamentary inquiries. There was one, you might remember 2017, the inquiry about Section 18C. So I wrote a submission to that. And there's been also some inquiries in Victorian level, New South Wales level. So a large part of my work is actually writing submissions to parliamentary inquiries, and often I'm asked to actually give evidence to parliamentary inquiries. And that's a pretty satisfying part of the role, where actually I can contribute to law reform and contribute to perhaps suggesting ways in which laws can be improved and changes can be made.
That's great, Bill. Congratulations being cited as well. That must have been really, really thrilling. What was the article and the case about, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, it was a vilification case, and I can't remember what type of vilification was, but in the course of the decision, the tribunal member was dealing with this argument that the alleged vilification was intended to be a joke. And within the free speech realm, that often is an argument, that satire and humour should sit outside of vilification. And it's this idea that comedians or satire has such an important role that it should not be covered by vilification laws. And the tribunal member actually referred to one of my articles where I can't remember exactly what I was saying, but I was saying that there's no reason in principle why satire should sit outside of the protection offered by vilification laws, because satire, of course, can be just as harmful as serious statements. And that was just a very specific point that the tribunal was making in that part of the decision.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So thanks for that, Bill. I really appreciate it. Finally, I'll just turn it over to Ryan. Ryan, can you perhaps give the attendees here a bit of a rundown of what your typical day looks like?
Thanks, Matt. So a typical day, I guess, like the previous speakers, is not the same. So a typical day for me would be obviously dealing with the multitude of emails we get nowadays and dealing with them in the morning. I'll also do feedback for the law grads as part of their PLT course, marking their work, giving feedback, sort of nurturing them through. I also deal with some of the lecturers lecturers is a strange word because we're not technically lecturers. We call ourselves pracademics. So I deal with a team of pracademics, I guess, and also we've got a casual adjunct workforce that do our oral assessments, etc. So I'm actually managing around 40 of them. And today, for instance, I had one call me who wanted to discuss a student who potentially failed a property practice assessment. Also, I deal a lot with our content and development team. If student materials need to be updated regularly, if a link's missing to a particular document, etc., I'm in contact with the content and development team to have that sorted so the students can have the most up-to-date contemporary information. College of Law also does PLT for a number of top-tier law firms in Melbourne, and I'm assigned one of those firms. And I was there just the other day doing our admission discussions. So they're having a look at what documents they need for admission, getting all their ducks in a row. And I was down there doing some assessments and helping them out with their admission checklist, because obviously that's a very sort of nerve-wracking time. They all think they're not going to get admitted. So I deal a lot with them, and obviously just general day-to-day organising of workshops, etc. Yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate that. Okay, I might just ask one more question before I hand it over to any questions that the attendees may have. And this is a pretty broad question, I know, so I do apologise, but what advice would you give to current law students who are considering a career that potentially may lead into what you are doing? And if you could keep it reasonably brief, that would be great. Melina, I might start with you first, if you don't mind, if you have any advice for up-and-coming law students.
Sure, thanks, Matt. The first thing I'd say, follow your passion, because that is what will eventually lead you to do what you like doing, and you will succeed also in something that you're passionate about. So that's what I've done. I followed my passion. I've tried different things and I've enjoyed most of them, but I followed my passion, and now what I'm doing is purely out of passion. And don't get hung up about being at a big law firm. Necessarily, there's lots of different options available there. Like we've all seen, everyone's done amazingly well on this, the people on this panel. So you've got heaps of different options. You can try out different things. Look after your mental health. Don't get burnt out, because as lawyers, we tend to do that. So I'm very conscious that young people especially work very hard to do that. Don't try not to do that. Put your mental health first. Report sexual harassment, including sexual, include all kinds of harassment, including sexual harassment, bullying, and discrimination. Because that's a big issue with, when you go into any workplace. It's a growing issue which we're seeing in the legal profession. Try to give back to the community, volunteer. I mean, all of us, like on this panel today, we all have one thing in common. We all want to do something over and beyond the normal legal practice. We talk about social justice, human rights, giving back to community, making submissions, contributing to advocacy. These are the things that really lead to this is what matters to me, and this is what matters, I feel, to most of the people who are on this panel. So that's something that you should do. And last one, to those who are from culturally diverse backgrounds, be proud of your heritage. That's your additional strength over others. So that's for me.
That's great, Melina. Thank you so much. It's very powerful and really pertinent. I might just hand it over to you, Melissa. Any advice for upcoming students?
Sure, agree with everything that Melina says, especially that follow your passion, and probably to do that, what I would say is be curious about what's out there. I mean, you're all being curious now, actually coming to this panel discussion, which is fantastic, because there are so many more alternative legal careers than there used to be, and they are now, there's such a fantastic array of them. And don't necessarily think that you have to practice law before you start into those careers. You can jump straight into them if you want to, because there are graduate programs now around legal operations, and so there are a lot of opportunities there more broadly. The other thing that I'll say, and glad to see that the College of Law people are here, because the Centre for Legal Innovation is part of the College of Law, and the Centre for Legal Innovation has an amazing amount of resources around alternative legal careers. Please jump on and have a look at that website, because there are a number of interviews that were done in an alternative legal career summit that was held a few weeks ago, and there are a ridiculous number of different alternative careers there: legal operations, technologists, design thinkers, client experience people. Amazing, a lot of information there for you to have a look at. So they're my two things: be curious, and also jump onto that CLI site and have a look at the information there. Thanks, Matt.
That's great. Thanks, Melissa. I'm just going to post a link to the Centre for Legal Innovation in the chat, so everyone can go check it out. It's a great resource. And I just have to say, from a from a personal point is that I'm just so glad seeing so many of these innovation in not just in law, but just in general. I think that innovation is just so important to whatever career that you decide that you want to do. I myself come from a technical background, and a lot of what we did is around innovation in technology, nothing to do with the law. But I just think with both Melissa and also Zoe have both mentioned innovation a few times, and I just think that places like the Centre for Legal Innovation are a really good resource for learning more about that. Okay, so the next person is Zoe. Zoe, you mentioned that you're 5 years or so since post-admission. So what advice do you have to some law students that may be considering a career, particularly in community law?
Yeah, absolutely. I echo everything that's been said so far. I think being kind to yourself and being very intentional about protecting your mental well-being and physical well-being is really important, especially when you're starting in the law. It's a very competitive space. There's so many messages coming at you being like, there's only one set path. There is no one set path. You can do whatever you want. Be driven by your strengths, be driven by your passion, but you can only understand what your strengths and passions are if you give yourself time to understand who you are as you're embarking on this journey. So that's definitely something that's really important and something that's led me really well in the community legal sector, because I have had to tread my own path. I've had to go and knock on doors where there are no doors. And I'm like, yeah, there should be a door. I'm going to make this a door. That's really, really important. And I think that echoes across kind of any profession, really. Like, just, it's good life advice. Just go make a door. And part of that is also like linked to being curious, not assuming that the status quo will always be static. Like, if you don't like the reality around you, like, manifest the change, but not just manifest the change, but just like make it happen. Just go ahead. Like, the worst scenario is that you get rejected, but then the good thing about rejection is you're like, okay, cool. I understand that's where the parameters are. And now I know how to navigate or strategically work around that. I'm going to give like one very practical piece of advice, which is something I've done every single year, every single 6 months, which is scan the employment market. Don't only look at the jobs that you're qualified for right now, but actually look at the jobs that you wish you were qualified for a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, and look at what the PD says, because you can match it next to your CV and go, cool, I matched that, but that's where my gap is. So I need to look for an opportunity that gives me an ability to put that gap into my CV so that in a year's time or 2 years' time, I can intentionally work towards being qualified for that role. That's kind of like a practical piece of advice that I've done since before I graduated. So yeah, those are my advices.
That's great. Thanks, Zoe. And I think if there's one takeaway from this event, make your own door might be it. I think that's a great piece of advice for anyone in any career, not just the law. Bill, I might hand it over to you now. Can you just perhaps give some advice to any students that may be considering a career in legal academia?
Yeah, I think the best bits of advice I could give to anyone is to find a mentor. So, and I think it applies to legal practice as well as the academy, that it's really important to have a mentor. And by a mentor, I mean someone who you can take a problem to, or any sort of situation that you're having difficulty with, and you can trust that person to give you good advice. And I think that's good for resolving, perhaps practical day-to-day technical issues you might be dealing with, but also, as Zoe mentioned, like in terms of helping you to chart a career path. And sometimes it's hard to see what that career path might be, but I've found having a mentor or several mentors can actually be quite helpful in terms of getting good advice and getting good guidance in terms of career as well as day-to-day things. I also would recommend that students join any relevant network. So join the Law Institute, for example, and join a committee, because you can be assured that there's a committee or a working group at the Law Institute which suits your practice area that you're interested in, or that suits your particular interests. And it's a great way to actually meet people who are actually working in the profession and working in an area that you're interested in getting a job in. It's I can't recommend it strongly enough in terms of networking, joining the Law Institute, and meeting other people who are working in the profession. And I guess final bit of advice, don't give up. It may seem really difficult to get employment opportunities in this current environment, but often it comes down to persistence. It's a matter of persisting to keep on knocking on that door. If you can't make the door, then you can at least knock on that door and make sure that you keep up your persistence, because that's often what makes the difference in terms of getting ahead in your career.
That's great. Thanks so much, Bill. I'm also a member of the Innovation and Tech section at the Law Institute, and I really would like to underline Bill's advice, because it's been such an amazing experience for me being on that committee for the last 18 months. And I've just met so many amazing lawyers and practitioners and other legal technologists, and it's been a fantastic experience. Ryan, I might hand it over to you now. Have you got any advice for any students at VU?
Yeah, I do. I'd like everyone here, embrace the tech. I was resistant to embracing the tech a couple of years ago. However, it's a force of nature, and there are many terrific articles out there, many people to follow on LinkedIn. So I'd recommend that. Just follow people on LinkedIn in terms of legal profession. Now, the legal tech, again, our Centre for Legal Innovation, get on that website, have a look. Our executive director there, Terry Modderstead, she's a bit of a legend at the College of Law. So have a look at the great things going on in the legal tech space. I'd also say to develop some resilience, and also look after your mental health and wellbeing. At the College of Law, we've embedded now a mental health and wellbeing course into what the law grads do in their PLT. So really, you look after yourself, have an outlet outside of the law. Okay, we're always hyper connected now, working from home for the past 2 years. You know, I'm sitting in my lounge room, so to speak. I can't get away from work. So go out for a walk, do some art, listen to music. Always good to have that outlet. And my final thing is to, I think maybe Melissa touched on it, question things. So a lot of the law grads that we see coming through, they want to know how to do things, not why we're doing these things. Okay, so why do we draft a statement of claim here? Why do we do this? Why do we put that in, say, an affidavit? Always be asking questions, always be curious, and just enjoy it. Okay, just enjoy the ride. It's a crazy ride, and yeah, just embrace it.
That's great. Appreciate that, Ryan. Some fantastic advice, and thank you to all our panelists for that question. I think there's some really great takeaways that we can all take away from that. So now I'd like to move into the second half of this, or the second part of this session, and invite anyone in the audience who may have a question. You can either pop it in the chat if you don't like, or you can put your hand up and I'll give you a call. So we already have one at Tarandeep. Please ask your question.
Thank you, Matt. I want to ask Molina a question. Before that, I just want to thank her. I don't think she recognizes me, but she's the reason I study law. Yeah, just for background, everyone's background. A couple of years ago, I was bullied at work and was being discriminated, and I was looking for help. Someone pointed me towards Molina, and she helped me through that period, provided me pro bono advice, legal advice, how to deal with it. And that's the reason I'm studying law, and she's the inspiration behind it. So I just want to publicly acknowledge that. And I haven't met her before that, and this is the first time I'm actually virtually meeting her. And while I'm at it, I also want to thank Pam, because she's the one who's provided opportunity in the university for people like me to, connect with, get legal skills which we require. Getting back to the question, Molina, how do you deal with work-life balance with the kind of work you do, the amount of work you do, and the diversity or the kind of work you on the boards you sit and something. How do you manage your work-life balance, especially having children? Because I'm struggling. I don't understand how, even if I have 48 hours in a day, I think that's not enough. How do you deal with it? And especially when coming from Indian background, you would have obligations, not just family, but other family members. How do you deal with it?
Thanks, Randeep, and I'm very humbled by what you said, and I really am, because this is what makes me feel that the work that I'm doing is worthwhile, and there are people who being inspired to take on this profession because of what they can give back to the community. So really humbled by that. Managing work-life balance, I'm not very good at it, so I shouldn't be giving advice on it. I take on too much, but I think I'm fueled by my passion. I just take on everything not everything, but most of the things people ask me to take up, and I just feel that my passion fuels me, and that's what keeps driving me to do what I do. I want to see a change in society.
We've just seemed to have lost you there, Melina. But thank you, Tarandeep, for such a great question. And
as you said, be the change you want to see.
I think she's just cutting in and out.
Sorry.
That's okay, Melina. It seems to have got a bit of an audio problem. It's cutting in and out from your end. But what I'll do is I will move on and ask Pawan. He has a question as well. The floor is yours.
I remember having a beer with you in the Dictum Society event. Thanks for organizing this. I had no idea that this is going to be such a great venue to meet all these wonderful people. My question is related to a little bit of my background. So I already was running business. I run hotels and service apartments and short stay in Victoria. And I was already working on a lot of legal cases for myself. And when COVID started, the disputes with the retail leases, commercial law, owners corporation increased substantially. So currently I'm working on around 37 different legal cases. So before even starting my legal journey, I was already kind of arguing against some of the famous barristers on owners corporation, on retail leases, on things like that. And I just thought that I'm not able to give legal advice. As president of Victorian Accommodation Association, a lot of operators will contact. Okay, so what's your advice? This is what is happening. Owners corporation is saying that. I couldn't give them legal advice because I'm not qualified. So I thought, okay, that's a big problem. And then that's what inspired me to join the course. So my objective is to help small businesses. I also realized that to hire a barrister or a lawyer, it's just not possible for small businesses. There is help available to tenants. As Zoe, I was just looking at your website as well. You're doing a wonderful job in that area. As a small business owner, if I want certain help, it's almost impossible. If there is something I'm not aware of, I would love to hear about that. But that's what I want to change. And I want to hear from the panelists. I am happy to work for free. This is the whole objective that, I'm doing this course. How can I make that change? How can I take that first step where people don't need to show that they are homeless to get legal help?
Matt, can I jump in there?
Yeah, for sure.
That? Yeah, because it is something that I have heard a lot about, and I know that the Legal Services Board have looked at this from a consumer. They now have a consumer panel, and there's been a lot of work done around that. And I think the group of people that you're talking about, Owen, are called the missing middle. So they're the people who can't qualify for the community legal service help that they need, centre help that they need, and they're the people who can't afford lawyers. And it is a real issue around that. And I know that there's some articles around it, and it's something that the Legal Services Consumer Panel is looking into as well. I don't have an answer for you, but maybe there's some other information. Bill might know more about it. It is something that people are aware of, that the profession is aware of.
Yes, I've got another challenge as well. See, the objective is to get what I said, but on top of that, like, I have got so much of legal experience, which I've not yet tried, but I'm not sure if Victoria University counts it as, like, you know, PLT, practical legal training, because there was no supervisor. Time to time, I've hired some barristers for some specific work. Sorry, is someone trying to say something? There's some background. Anyway, like, I want to help people like Zoe. I'm looking at your website while talking to you. You know, these things I've got a lot of experience in, whether it is residential lease, retail lease, owners corporation, defamation suits, but I can't work as a lawyer. I can't get any experience. I can't help other people. Also, I have won several cases, very difficult cases. And neither I get the opportunity to help other people, nor my experience is counted. What do you guys suggest me to do at this stage?
So can I jump in there? Sorry, I might have missed part of your question because I was my internet was playing up. So I presume you are doing your law degree now, and you're not yet qualified, and you're already getting work and things, and you want to help, but you're not able to. So when I came to the country, I faced something similar. I was doing my master's of law. I wasn't getting a job. I couldn't work as a lawyer because I wasn't qualified. But I went through the whole process. I had to. There was no option to do that. But while I was doing that, I did work for a firm as a research assistant, even though I had 7 years of experience in India. You have to start from scratch. You have to do it. You have to do the hard yards and get up to where you are. So then I got my job at Mint Clayton Youth, which was, and then after 6 months, and that was as a trainee lawyer. And then I had to, my straight away jump was as an associate, and then straight away jump to principal, because my skills were already there. So once you're in the system, it'll become much easier. You have to wait till you do that. And what I was also doing was volunteering at the community legal centers. That's a fabulous way of contributing, because you can actually do that, and you can be supported by the team over there to provide that. You can't give advice, but you can listen in, and you can then talk to your principal lawyer. And I know it's frustrating. I was frustrated for a couple of years, but you have to do the hard yards. Don't give up. That's all I'll say. Just keep going, and you will eventually get there. For a little while, this is what it seems like, but you will eventually get there. And I've been talking to the VLSB and VLAB about qualification, about how to make it simpler for people when they come from overseas. How can you make it simpler for them to requalify, rather than look at individual experience, and if they've already got a lot of experience, try and give them a quicker pathway to get into the system. So eventually, it takes time for these changes to happen. It will happen. So then you just got to be patient, and you'll get there as well. So that's all I'll say from my own experience.
Thank you, Melina. I don't want to take too much time. I know everyone wants to ask questions. I would like to connect with some of you guys. My background is not legal like yourself, Molina. I've never studied or practiced anywhere else. I'm a businessman. I run businesses. And, with the COVID, a lot of things started changing. And, the hoteliers or short stay business people, they started being challenged by retail leases, commercial leases, and Owners Corporation Act and those kind of things. That's how I got involved. So a little bit different, but yeah, definitely I would try to connect with some of the panelists. It'll be great help to me.
Thanks, Paulwyn, and thanks to the panelists for your answer. Simon, you have a question. You have a question.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to ask, talking about COVID, what sort of impact that has had on your work over the last 2 years, and maybe even on your career projection or trajectory?
I'm happy to go first, if that's okay. Oh, sorry, were you asking someone in particular? No? We at Hive Legal, when we first set up in 2014, were remote anyway. So we were working, we had the choice. So our team could work either from home or in the office. So for us, COVID wasn't so much of a bad thing because we were already paperless and using technology in a way that was working for us. So that was good. However, what we really needed to ensure was the well-being of our team, because when you take out that option and that choice to come into the office, you've really got to work hard at maintaining culture and connectedness. So we had to even up our ante even more, even though we were aware that these were issues, to make sure that we were looking after our team as much as we could. So COVID didn't make so much of a difference to the success of business success of our firm, but it did make a difference to how we continued to work, our ways of working. So we have put an additional emphasis onto that side of it. For me personally, COVID was a disaster for me because my role in consulting, I had a beautiful pipeline all sorted out for in-person workshops and sprints for 2020. And when that wasn't available, I had to look for alternatives. And so this is where tech comes in beautifully. I was able to, I still use it now, an tech platform called Mural, which allows me to do post-its, brainstorms, and collaborate with people over Zoom, and for that to be real time, which was fantastic. The benefit of that for us was that meant that I didn't have to do things in person anymore. I could do sprints globally. So I was then able to have sprints where we had people in the US, in Northern Africa, working with the American Bar Association, and that technology was a godsend, and brought about by a not so godsend, which was the pandemic. But it was really interesting to see how the pandemic really shifted that focus to using technology to keep us connected. So the two things I've spoken about, I suppose, are connected, because it was that keeping that human element and staying connected, but also that use of technology.
I probably go and I'll say agree with that as well. This technology, I think, has kept us going. I know a lot of people who are litigation lawyers do say that it's been difficult with for litigation work with courts, but I think that's been a savior, though, for at least for the work to be able to continue. And but also being on the Law Institute board, we did hear from a lot of practitioners who said they found it really hard during this time because they couldn't go into the offices, they couldn't access their files, and a lot of them are not tech savvy, so they were having a lot of issues. So we did a lot of advocacy on their behalf, but unfortunately we weren't considered as essential workers. So we had to work around the system, work with the system. So it's been what it is. Personally, my work was impacted. Of course, I had less work for a particular period of time because I do only commercial transactional, but it has gone back now pretty much to normal. In that time, I spent a lot of time doing all the other community work that I do. So I didn't feel like I sort of wasted any time or that I didn't have enough to do. I always felt I had enough.
Yeah, I would also just jump in here. So I wasn't with Annika Legal at the start of the pandemic. I was with Justice Connect. We actually got so much more work overnight, and with none of the volunteer workforce, because we were no longer able to manage them in person, which was really important to us from a well-being point of view. So that was really intense, and it was only through technology and through looking after each other and putting more time into intentionally looking after each other that we were able to get through the pandemic. So I guess that's some of the negative impacts of the pandemic. But the positive impacts of the pandemic are, like Melissa, I was able to continue consulting with PillNet after I came back to Australia. At the time that I came back, I was like, can I continue working on these projects? And they're like, oh, we don't know, you're going back to like a whole other country. And then a pandemic happened, everyone was online anyway. And I was actually able to work like 2 jobs at the same time with the full knowledge of my employers for 10 months just to finish off the project. So I think in this kind of more virtual world that we live in, if you're looking for opportunities, you don't need to look in just Victoria. You can actually look all across the world. Like you could be studying at VU and doing a project for some organization in the US if you want to. So I think that's a really positive impacts of the pandemic.
Yeah, I think that's exciting.
And Simon, just quickly, I think another positive impact is that I think it's the legal profession can be quite conservative and old-fashioned in its views. However, we now know that we can work from home and we're quite efficient and productive at home. And, you know, we're in a hybrid model now where we do 3 days in the office, 2 days at home. And previously it was, no, you've got to be in the office 9 to 5, day in, day out. However, that's not the case anymore. And I think that's one of the positive impacts on COVID is that we can work from home, which obviously cuts out travel time. We've got more time to socialise, be with our family and really unwind. So if there's a positive out of COVID, I think that's it for me.
No, that's good. Thanks for that. I'm the first year student, and the height of the pandemic, or the depths of the pandemic, was when I sort of decided I needed to make a bit of a career change. And so that's sort of where my question sort of came from. So thank you, everyone.
Yeah, and interestingly, like my experience as a teacher, like your situation, Simon, is actually a common one where people have decided to go back and commence a law degree or commence some study as a result of the pandemic, or a sort of a career change, and that's really positive. And I think, and a lot of students have said to me that it's difficult networking in this current environment, but keep in mind that there are really good networking opportunities like LinkedIn that was mentioned before, and there are a lot of online forums and a lot online networking opportunities which are available. And I think in this current situation where sort of face-to-face things are still a bit limited, you do have to make the most of those online opportunities which are out there, because networking is a huge part of finding a job and finding, you know, satisfying work in the area that you want to work in. So networking opportunities are still out there, but yeah, I think you perhaps need to look harder these days, because they're available, but you have to sort of work harder to find them. And the Law Institute, I think, has been doing some great work in this area, like keeping those networking opportunities, the CPD training and things like that running, particularly for young lawyers and for junior lawyers. And I just want to come back. Someone was mentioning before about moving career, and in my experience, people who do law as a second career, they will often experience a period of difficulty, like finding their first job, or having to get that 2 years experience. But often they will actually move very, very rapidly after they've actually got that 2 year period. Like they might open their own law firm or something like that. And in my experience, being a mature age student and having that previous background, whether it's in business or some other area, is a huge advantage in terms of your legal work. Because in my experience, mature age students often progress really, really quickly once they're actually in the workforce. It's looked on by employers as a huge advantage.
That's great. And as a mature age student, that's great to hear. I also come from a business background, and so this will be my second career as well. And one thing that has consistently surprised me is just how many mature age students there are at VU that are looking to get into a second career. And it's been absolutely fascinating meeting the diverse group of people in my lectures. It's been really interesting.
Matt, just quickly, yes, with the mature age, we get a lot of students through College of Law, PLT, which are mature age. They've been accountants, small business owners. We have a lot of policemen and women who come through, and yeah, they're really loving it. So it's you're never too old, as they always say.
That's really good advice. We have just a few minutes left. So is there any further questions from any of our attendees today that would like to ask a quick question to any of our panelists?
Yes.
Swan, great to see you. Have you got a question?
Yeah. Yeah, I always have a question. But yeah, today I just want to ask a very quick question about like I am at the final year of a law student, and as Molina mentioned before, because we can't give a legal advice or even like migration advice, because that is even I have a very strong background of that. But I mean, how to join to the volunteer to the community lawyer at the final year of a law student. How to do that? Is that possible for us?
I might jump in terms of kind of seeking kind of experience in the community legal sector when you're still a student. There's actually so much you can do as a volunteer paralegal, and the CLCs really, really need it. And because of the constraints, the resource constraints in CLCs, often you can actually do a lot as a volunteer paralegal. So I was actually struck, like when I was volunteering for RAILS, so that's the Refugee and Immigration Legal Service in Brisbane, as a final year law student. It's a much smaller centre than Refugee Legal, ASRC, etc. in Victoria. The work I was doing there as a volunteer student, I would say, was actually more complex than the work I was doing as a volunteer lawyer here. So it just really depends on which kind of centres you go to. If you aren't aware of this website already, Ethical Jobs is a great place to look for volunteering opportunities as well as paid opportunities. And yes, Bill just posted Federation CLC. They also have a careers page. Just go and look there and just apply for anything that's there. But in terms of my experience kind of getting into the CLC space, so when I did my undergrad in Brisbane, there's not as many CLCs there, and they don't advertise as much for volunteering positions. So what I did was I just sent my CV through, and then when I tried to get my PLT placements, none of them offered PLT. I didn't care. I just went and got a coffee with like various like CEOs and was like, I think you need a PLT student, and here's what I can offer. I think you should make a program for me. Why not? And they actually appreciate it because, you know, like most law students actually don't do that. And you'll get a lot of no's, but you only need one yes. And the worst case scenario is you get all no's, but you've tried. And you've also put your name like kind of like firmly on their radar, so they'll remember your name from here on in, because they're like, who is this person who won't leave me alone? Diplomatically, of course, like don't stalk them. But the point is, there are a lot of positions out there. In Victoria, there are so many CLCs. Apply for the opportunities. And if you know exactly which CLC you want to go for, just send your CV in. Why not?
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, because I have a very strong background and I have a qualified in migration law, and I work like 12 years in human resource and administration. So yeah, I really want to do something, volunteer to help the community also to gain a lot more like knowledge. And yeah, but I don't know how to start. To be honest, like let's say maybe one day per week is okay, but yeah, I'm looking for if I have a more website or something like that. Could you please that put in somewhere here so I can yeah, I am same study group with Matthew here. We are the same boat. Like so yeah. I'm on LinkedIn too. I follow Dr. Swanee, Dr. Bill Swanee. So from there, I thank you for accept me, because from you I know a lot more like a connection with all other lawyer and all other things. And today I feel like a really useful from all of you. Give us a very, 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 very helpful advice. Yeah, because for us we don't have a much like a still worry, how can I find a job this area, and how can we find the job, and a lot of things like that. And from the advice today, I feel really, really confident. Maybe that keep my passionate and moving on. Yeah, thank you so much.
That's great, Swan. That's a great question. And Bill has actually put a link to the Federation of Community Legal Centres into the chat. So have a look at that link, and that might be able to give you some more advice. Well, it's just ticked over 7:31. So I think that it's probably time that we wrap up the session. It's been absolutely fantastic. And I really cannot thank our panelists enough for coming here today and providing their expertise and some really fascinating and interesting discussion regarding their specific roles. So thank you so much. It was really, really welcome. Before we go, I do have a request from our secretary, May. She's asked that if we could put our cameras on. She just wants to get a group photo for our records from everyone. So if you can, just throw on your cameras if you're able. And then May, I'll hand it over to you to take the picture.
Thanks, Matt. Just quickly wanted to add something to Swan's request or question. Swan, check your collaborate. We had plenty of placements and internships going. Get in touch with Pam, because those are opportunities as well that you can use to grow.
Yeah, May. I'm doing internship with West Justice at the moment. Yeah, 1 day per week and nearly finished it. Yeah,
awesome.
but I want to do more broader, because in terms of I'm doing now is about tenancy resident, but I'm very strong in migration law, and I have my own company too. But I mean, I just want to get more in community and build more experience. So yeah, in terms like a family violence or something like that, or yeah, because migration normally go with the how to say, family violence. And yeah, I try to if have, because until now I don't know that we are, as a law student, we can attend to the volunteer to community lawyer. I didn't know that, because I think even that job we need a qualify, and so I didn't know that until today. So today, if I know that, and then I can, yeah, moving forward. I mean, thank you so much for the advice. Yeah.
West Justice actually has a separate, if I'm not mistaken, family law stream as well, that you may be that you might consider asking them about.
Yeah, they have, but actually that one, like it term for internship, they only have like a 2 or 3 positions, but very high demand for that family violence or something like that. So yeah, I'm happy with the tenancy resident. But I mean, because until now I didn't know that law student can attend to the volunteer community lawyer. I didn't know that, but now if I know that, it's that much more easy. Yeah, to moving on.
That's great. Thanks, Swan. Have you got that picture, May?
No, not yet. So I'm just going to count down 3,
No
2,
worries.
1, and everyone give a big smile. Okay, so 3, 2. Oh, hang on. Sorry. 3, 2, 1. Smile. All done. Thank you, Mark.
Awesome.
Thank you,
Thanks. Thanks, May. I will close the recording now, and then I will close the meeting. Again, thank you so much to all our panelists. Thank you so much to Marco and the College of Law for being such an awesome sponsor and supporter of this event and Dictum in general. Just a reminder that we do have our competition coming up in negotiation. So please keep an eye out for that. And if you're interested in that, please sign up. So I will close the meeting now. Again, thank you and have a good night.